Yes, hello, good evening, everyone. Once again, this is Coach Ariel, and welcome to Kingdom Talk. And today, I was given again the privilege and honor to have this man of God to be one of our special guests in this program, Kingdom Talk. Not only a pastor, he's not only an author of books, but also he is a lawyer by profession. Let's welcome Dr. Maurizio Tiezzi. Welcome to the program, Doc.
Thank you, Ariel, for having me. Thank you very much. I'm always honored to be with you on your program.
It's my honor and pleasure to serve you, Doc. So excited to hear the message that we were going to discuss in this program, especially this topic that we have today. It is related to the book that you have. I don't know if this is available in Amazon, but it is an Italian version. I am right, Doc?
Yeah, that's right. I released a new book in last September, and it's this one that you can see. It's called In the Beginning, and it's only in Italian so
Wow.
far. And the subtitle is Towards the Awareness of One's Own Identity. You start from who you are
Yeah.
in God's eyes, never get to do what is right for Him.
Mhm.
The beginning is let's start from here.
That
It's a
saying
good
is
saying.
really common in the Filipino culture. I think I will say that in Tagalog version, ang hindi marunong lumingon sa kanyang pinanggalingan ay hindi makakarating sa kanyang paroroonan. If we don't look back to our past, to where we begin, we can't go into our destination.
Yeah, that's it sounds very nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thanks for the translation anyway.
Yeah, Doc. So today, just like what
Yeah.
I'm always saying, Doc, to all my guests in this program, Kingdom Talk, this is your show, this is your program, dominate all the sphere of influence.
Thank you so much. So, identity, I write this type of books which are mixing, I would say quite wisely, psychology, because I'm a professional counselor
Mm-hmm.
in transaction analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So, I focus on existential issues like, the one we're talking about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And I see what's the implication of it, of the concept, also in the psychological field,
Mm-hmm.
having the skills and the professional ability to understand it. And it comes out quite nice. And they're not contradictory at all, the spiritual and the
Yes.
psychological, if combined wisely. So I don't want to say I'm wise. I'm saying that the wisdom it's from God to combine things in a way that people can
Mm-hmm.
understand and make them useful for them.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, this latest book is much focused on what about distortions of
Mm-hmm.
identity. So
Mm-hmm.
not just to define identity, but to help people to see how it can be distorted. And of course, the psychological level here is very important to
Mm-hmm.
analyze what's going on in our life
Mm-hmm.
and how to go back on track.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, faith is the main ingredient in going back on track. But what I suggest, what I propose in this book and other writings that I released, is distortions of who we are and what we can do, and these sort of concepts come from discounting uh, processes, like devaluating processes.
Yeah, yeah.
So they all come from existential devaluation.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's not too difficult as a word or as a concept. If I know who I am for God, because from Him we come, all of us, all human beings. So if I know who I am, but I put my faith in whom I am not less than what I am for God, I discount myself, I devaluate myself, and I don't live up to the standard I could
Yeah.
for God. So this process of devaluation has a very powerful tool
Mm-hmm.
in its hands, which is faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to maybe understand it sometimes, We put faith in anything, either it's true or fake,
Mhm.
it will be true for us anyway.
You know, Doc, while I studying the life of Jesus Christ in the four gospel, I discovered some interesting truth about his life, that Jesus, he knew who he was, where he came from, his mission, his purpose, and the reason why he was born. It's look like the secret of Jesus' success is he knew his identity.
Yes, I agree with you. And we can expand that, saying not only he knew it, he was fully aware
Mm-hmm.
and he was always faithful to who
Mm-hmm.
he was.
Mm-hmm. You repeat that word. He's
Yeah,
always.
he always faithful to his identity.
Mm-hmm.
So, because faith is not just to being convicted of something, giving our mental consent to a concept to be true for us, which is a conviction,
Mm-hmm.
but faith has to do with faithfulness,
Mm-hmm.
to a belief. So if you believe something because you trust that it is true, not that you think it's true, but you
Mm-hmm.
trust it,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be faithful to it. So if you trust that you're not worthy, you're going to be unworthy
Mm-hmm.
in your behavior. And you'll never be up to God's standard
Mm-hmm.
for representing Him on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real pity for people because
Okay.
it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah.
And first thing I want to say, the first step from what you mentioned about this, the question, who am I, determines the answer to the question, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ponder a minute on this. If I don't know who I am, I cannot know what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So if this microphone would not know who it is, could not serve the function of
Yeah,
amplifying my voice and transmitting it.
that's right.
So I know who I am, therefore I become aware of the potential that I have. What can
Mm-hmm.
I do? But I never be able to understand who I am unless I understand why I was born,
Mm-hmm.
why I was created.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, this question that we should ask ourselves is not really who am I, but why was I created? Why
Mm-hmm.
am I here?
Mm-hmm.
So that because identity is sort of serving the purpose, and potential is serving identity. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like I call it existential crescendo. From the origin, you go to purpose because once you find out your purpose, that's only because you found out whom you're coming from. So when you have the origin, you know the purpose, then you know the identity
Mm-hmm.
of a person, then the potential that that person has
Yeah.
to do what it was created for.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things, I call them things, but these are very philosophical, existential concepts that we can, these concepts respond to a criterion of strict functionality.
Mm-hmm.
I want to emphasize this because very often, especially in Christian circles, we end up in judging everything from the moral aspect. Good or not good, worthy, unworthy.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, right or wrong. It always has a sort of a moral background. So
Mm-hmm.
you're judging whether it is good or not good. These concepts, they respond to a criterion which I call strict, of functionality, because God created us for a purpose, and the
Yeah.
purpose designed our identity. So identity is something that we are, someone that we are in order to fulfill our purpose. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a question of functionality, not
Mm-hmm.
of moral judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Because whenever you start putting the moral judgment into the question, who am I? You're going to find yourself either good or not good.
Mm-hmm.
And if unfortunately you find yourself not good, as often could happen, you're never going to believe who you are for God. You
Yeah.
never work out anything of what he put
Yeah.
in your hands.
So you're
So it's
saying, Doc, how we see ourselves is how we treat ourselves.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's maybe another thing, but as yes, that's the consequence. Because if I believe that I'm not good, well, I'm using these concepts of good or evil, not evil, but not good is better. So give an idea, but there are lots of possible degrees of moral judgment that we can give to ourselves. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, I use some transactional analysis ways of describing the existential position that we can take in this life. Since we are born or even conceived, start sort of facing a reality which could us seem to be friendly or not friendly, okay or not okay. So depending on how we face the supposed, because it doesn't mean that it is
Mm-hmm.
hostile. Let's say,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, life. But if we supposedly understand that life is hostile, we have to adjust and we have to sort of adapt to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we often people get a plus before themselves or a minus. So in order to adapt to the situation and start to survive, it can be I'm plus, you minus, I'm minus, you're plus, or we're both minus,
Mm-hmm.
which is the depressive position. So the ideal would be plus plus. We respect each other as God's images walking on this planet, and we believe that both have our own identity, our own purpose, our own potential, all coming from the same Heavenly Father.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, people take different existential positions and they start believing that that's the only way to survive in this world. This is one of the ways that we have to adapt, and which is wonderful because we can sort of face any kind of situation. But
Yeah.
we start discounting ourselves. I use this verb in English, discounting, which is, giving less value to ourselves than what we have. That's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We begin to believe it. It becomes not just a mental conviction, but an existential belief,
Mm-hmm.
and we remain faithful to it.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus had about himself the belief of who he was,
Yeah.
and he always acted out of it because he
Yeah.
remained faithful to it,
And
notwithstanding the situations.
I discovered that Jesus believed who he was, even if those people who surround him don't believe him.
Yes, yes, because he knew his father. For people who don't know their father, it becomes very difficult
Mm-hmm.
to find their own identity.
Can you repeat that word, Doc?
Some people don't know their father, uh, earthly father, I mean, and so they find it more difficult than others to find out who they are. Because, as I said, you can find out who you are if you find out whom you come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
That starts the process, most likely. Wrap up these first things that we said with a phrase that I have in my book. I have it written down here, so it's translated this time. The purpose of my life determines my identity and my origin. My identity requires the expression of my potential, answering the
Mm-hmm.
question of what I can do. I hope the translation was right. This is the idea: origin, purpose, identity, and potential. And it's
Mm-hmm.
all linked by a criterion of functionality.
Mm-hmm.
So the question that we should ask ourselves when we try to analyze what we are doing, how we behave with others, towards ourselves, as you were introducing this aspect, and towards even God, analysis should always start from not it is good or not good, but is it working or not
Mm-hmm.
working in order to fulfill my purpose?
Mm-hmm.
So purpose is the key word, even in identity issues.
Mm-hmm. They are
Of course,
connected to one another.
Yes, because, and we are connected to one another because identity, social related concept. I want to explain it, if I can, a little bit. You know, if I were desert island, there's no one, there's nothing. It doesn't make any difference whether I find out who I am or because identity is something that defines ourselves in relation to others.
Mm-hmm.
So because it distinguishes us, the human race has, can be an identity related to the human race, the race. The person, because we have our own individual identity too, and that makes it possible for me to be not you, and at the same time to be unique, because there will be no one else like me. So I'm not you, but the others are not me. How can I find out that? Because I know who I am.
Yeah.
So that's so we can identify with ourselves and at the same time distinguish ourselves from others. So that's why identity for me is important. So I'm giving out these concepts. This is my sort of understanding. So it's a proposal what I'm giving here.
Yes.
I'm not giving doctrine of anything of any kind. That's my proposal. And if someone finds it interesting, can ponder on it, and God can give light to the pondering process. I wanna go ahead in saying that many people are trying to define who they are, but by what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's the best way to enter into discounting process.
Mm-hmm.
So to distort your identity. I'm trying to make it clear or understandable. In the Christian field, make it easier for people who are listening. You define yourself by what you do or you don't do. Sooner or later, you're going to find out that you're not worthy. Or that you're not good because you sin. You should be defined as a person by the sins or the good deeds in troubles. Because sooner or later, I'm going to find out that I'm not the one that God is telling me I am.
Mm-hmm.
So either he's a liar or I'm not good to live to his standard. That's a real problem. You know, I remember to the Romans, Paul wrote something very interesting about this. He went through the process of identification in chapter 6. Like we can identify ourselves by identifying ourselves in Jesus. So that's a very important concept, but I leave it for later on. So Paul understood who he was. He could identify with Jesus in his death and resurrection. So that's the first point. So we are in chapter 6. But in chapter 7, he started questioning and saying, me, because I know who I am, but I'm sinning. And therefore I'm not good. But hang on a minute. And I'm trying to read the verse. It's Romans 7:15. I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. And then in the end, he's saying that it is no longer myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. So he understood who he was. He didn't fall into the trap of judging himself by the sins that he was committing. So what I do does not define myself, because it's not me who does it. It's sin who lives in me in that situation. So what we do does not change, neither define who we are. Only our purpose and therefore our origin can define it and determine what we're going to do. I want to encourage people in saying this, that if you find yourself not doing what you could do, does not change who you are in God's eyes. So don't lose hope. Don't lose track. because that's the
Mhm.
trick of the devil, to put you down because you're not doing good deeds or not going good enough. You're not doing what others require you to do. You're not
Mhm.
pleasing people. You're not pleasing God. You're a disaster. So that's the sort of discounting
Mm.
process in the Christian.
Look, the one of the best example is Rahab. What Rahab do did not define who she is in the future.
Yeah, she was a prostitute, but didn't change her spiritual DNA in
Yeah.
some way. So I hope that people really can grasp the idea that if we believe that we are what we do, we're never going to find out who we can really do according to who we really are. Now, people saying, oh, your identity is your spirit. First of all, depends if you have a dualistic understanding or no. If you think that human beings are made of soul and body, you should speak of soul. But if you think that we are spirit, soul, and body, people tend to say that the spirit is the identity. Now, I don't say that is wrong, but the point is that even creatures which are not human beings have spirit.
Mhm.
That might sound very odd and strange, but that's how the Bible speaks about some animals, for instance, that
Mhm.
they have spirits. So it could be tricky or slippery to define our identity by what we believe we are composed of somehow in the invisible part.
Mhm.
So I suggest that our identity is more related to the purpose. That is why,
Mhm.
than to what is the nature of the substance of that expresses it. What they're doing according to their understanding and awareness of who they are, they would really change.
Yeah.
So it's not just telling them change because it doesn't work. People have to experience
Yeah.
that their beliefs about themselves are heading for destruction.
Yeah.
And once they find out that, if they can sort of refocus and identify with Jesus and find themselves in the royal family as a royal priesthood in the kingdom of God, they will never lose track of who they are and what they're called to do.
Amen.
And there'll be a life of full satisfaction. Yeah. So start this journey towards the awareness of our own identity, and we will work out through our personality, our behavior, what God intended for us and for Himself. Fulfilling dream of my life, for instance.
Amen. Thank you so much, Doc, for your life. Thank you for sharing that powerful message. Until next time, Kingdom salute to you.
Bye bye and kingdom salute to you.